Um, yeah, so I think we should all have a nice cup of tea now. We were talking about the object of meditation and going beyond the object. No matter what that is, it could be the rising and falling of the abdomen, it could be the breath, it could even be chanting Om or any mantra that you've been assigned or given to chant. But the object is only the door that we come to, but then we must see the truth beyond that door.
I'm so sorry.
And that's what we might call the true state of meditation, although most of us believe that the meditation is the actual path, that we are doing something. You know, I am meditating, I am concentrating, I am observing my abdominal movement, I am feeling the breath, there's all this it's the ego that is actually manipulating its own nature in order to gain an experience. But if we are to understand the true state of meditation, not the practice or the technique of meditation, that leads us somewhere. But we have to then let go of the technique and the object. And then we fall into the state of realizing the true nature of the object that we've been observing. And this is what we could call the true state of meditation, as opposed to the practice or the technique or the object of meditation. Even the skill or the ability to meditate, these are all within the realm of the ego and the I am doing. But the truth, the reality, the realization, the essence that can be realized lies beyond the object, the technique, and the actual doer of the meditation. And I'm deliberately using the word falling into, because yes, it's me who comes to meditate, sits down, and focuses and tries to... Congratulations. Who tries to get an experience from the meditation. We all do this. This is coming to meditate with my ego. My ego would like to have an experience from meditation. But then as we focus on our object, we do as we've been instructed to do. We even question ourselves, am I doing this right? You know, am I meditating the right way, etc. All of that skill and technique and practice and observing a particular object or many objects as we've been instructed, these are all leading us to, as I'm saying, the door. But the door then must be opened or seen through, passed through, gone beyond, and that's where we fall into a state of meditation, which is more, it cannot be predetermined when you are going to have that experience. However, you should meditate in order to set up the possibility that that experience could take place. So we should still meditate. I think some people may get the idea, and some teachers are saying, oh, you don't need to meditate. You know, you could have this experience, you know, walking down the street or driving the car or, you know, while you're shopping at Coles or something like that. It's true, but you need some conditions that will promote those experiences. And that is the technique and the form of meditation. And it really doesn't matter what kind of meditation. So it could be a mantra meditation. It could be a candle flame staring meditation, or it could be a a chanting meditation or metta meditation. It could be samatha, concentration, fixed object meditation, or it could be the vipassana, observing natural phenomenon as they arise within our field of awareness meditation. But all of these are techniques that lead us to observe or feel or experience an object or something that is present more closely, but then we need to almost become one with the object or seemingly dissolve into the object or pass through the object, or at least understand the true nature of the object. So this is where I think many people get stuck in meditation. They get to the meditation, they're doing the technique, they're observing the object, they're following the instructions, but they are stuck with that rather than and as I said, you can't predetermine when this is going to happen, but it's the, what can I say, it's the acceptance of the object, the softening, the relinquishing, the non-expectation of getting something from observing this object, but the full acceptance, relinquishment, even surrendering to the experience of that moment. This also is, even though I'm using lots of words here and I'm using different ways to explain it, it's still difficult to explain because it is an experience that you fall into this state rather than you manipulate and force and control to manifest that state. This is all the work of the ego, and that's what my main point is, that most of us are meditating with our egos. It's our ego that brings us to meditate. We sit down and we meditate with the ego. The ego is using its manipulation and controlling techniques and it's using the meditation technique to get to a particular experience. But what I'm saying is that the pure state of meditation, or the realization, can arise when that forcing, manipulation and control mechanism falls to the background, and there is just a softening, a relinquishing, and allowing for the present moment object to be as it is. It's so nice, like you're observing the rising and falling of the abdomen. So the teacher's told you to sit and observe the rising and falling of the abdomen. It could be the sensation of the breath at the nostrils. Either one, it doesn't matter. So you're sitting, you're observing, you're feeling, and yes, you're with the rising and falling, or the in-breath, the out-breath. You're feeling the sensation. So in the beginning, you know, it's almost like, check, I'm sitting still, check, I'm concentrating, check, I feel the movement, the sensation, check, yes, it's my breath, yes, it's my abdomen. It's like I'm doing all the right things, but then there comes to a point where the sensation, it's like there are two things that are happening. There's the sensation, and then there's the awareness of the sensation. But these are still somewhat conceptual. There's still, I am watching the sensation. But then the names and the concepts of these fall away. So there is no abdomen, there is no nose, and even there's no breath, there's no movement. And then even the sensation, it's not a sensation anymore, there's just like an experience. And the awareness is not, I am watching anymore. There's just a pure experience. And that, when the mind stops chatting, and there is just a pure experience of either sensation, could be the movement, could be the breath, or even beyond that, where the sensation itself falls away. And there could be just a sense of knowing. And sometimes that sense of knowing, we could attribute that to awareness, or perhaps even consciousness itself. Just the essence of being. It's like the energy that flows through the mind, but not any specific object or subject, or there's no this or that or here or there, or there's no time, there's no distance, no calculations, no concepts, no names for things. There is just a simple and pure flow, and that's what I'm calling essence, energy, consciousness. Even call it reality. Actually call it whatever you like. It really doesn't matter at that level. And then what happens is you come back out of that and concepts start to fall back into place, and you go, oh, I've got a pain in my knee, and what time is it? Oh, I've got to get dinner ready tonight, and it's sort of all of a sudden all the concepts fall back into place, and you're back who you are, you're back into, oh, I am me, my story, my name, my, whatever, my Facebook page, or my occupation, or my social status, or my position in the family, etc., my citizenship, etc. And off we go back into samsara. But this definitely changes your perspective of samsara and of your life as well. So I guess my main point is that this falling into this meditative state, falling into this quietness, peacefulness, stillness, emptiness, nothingness, we could also call it, is not something that you can predetermine or plan. And in fact, even the manipulation and control of the ego that puts us into the meditation cannot guarantee that we will fall into it. But it's more that relinquishing. Having found your meditation object, stabilized the mind to some extent, then really all you have to do is just let go and just float down the stream and just see what happens, and hopefully some beautiful experience can arise. Yeah.
And Jeff, earlier you were using the analogy of it's like falling asleep.
That's what I'm saying. It's that falling into that meditative state rather than the controlled and manipulative. It's like trying to make yourself fall asleep. The more you try to do it, the more you can't, because you're kind of concentrating. But and the falling asleep is really that point, and that's a lovely thing that you can meditate on as well. Is watching and waiting when the mind actually falls into sleep. And it's so beautiful when you can actually see the mind drop into that state of sleepiness. Sometimes it's almost like a yo-yo. It kind of drops in and you drop back out and you go, huh, that was sleep. I saw that. And it was like, oh wow, that was so cool. And then, and sometimes it might do that like once or twice, and then you really will fall into sleep. And it's not until you wake up hours or, whenever, the next day, and you go, oh, I remember seeing myself fall asleep last night. It's a really lovely experience, but it is really that point where the mind just surrenders. It just stops doing anything. Even if there was thought that led you into that into that state of total relinquishing, usually we fall asleep on a thought that has no doing, or there's nothing there's no outcome from this thought. It's just maybe useless or soft or gentle mental state that there's no anxiety about the outcome of the mental state or the thought or something. And it's just this real point where the mind just completely lets go. And that's why we call it falling asleep. And so really often in meditation, it's not so much you get to those beautiful states of meditation through just hard work and force. You can do that, and many people do that, and many people are taught to force and push and strive and make the meditation happen. That's building up to the experience, but then there has to be that point of letting go. And that's when we often have those really beautiful experiences in meditation that you can neither predict nor expect. And so all you can do, the best thing you can do, is set yourself up that you will be able to at least be still, relax, watch what's happening, hopefully let go of expectations to the point where the mind can surrender, and there is often then this falling into.
I can identify with that. Sometimes happens in my meditation. Unfortunately, it only lasts about 5 or 10 seconds.
Yes.
But sometimes on the other side, that I get this feeling of joy.
Totally. It's very joyful.
Very, very rare, but very nice.
Yeah. And you use the word unfortunately, and of course this is another thing that comes up in meditation. Oh, I want, it didn't last long. It didn't last long enough. Oh, I want more of that.
I'm not craving, but...
And so again, the mind goes back into its grasping, controlling. Oh, how do I get that back? How do I make that work? Well, yes, to a certain extent, we need to set up a situation where I'm in a position where that can happen. So quite often it's more likely that it's going to happen in a meditative environment and when I'm perhaps still and calm and nothing else to do. However, when we are, and I was almost going to say when we're skillful at doing that, but that's contrary to what I've been saying. When we've had that experience on numerous occasions, we start to rewire our mind to the possibility that I can fall into a meditative state anywhere, anytime. As opposed to, I can only enter into these states when I am forcibly meditating. So, and this is what's happening to me, is that my mind now has experienced this in so many different situations that it's kind of broken down the idea, I need to meditate to fall into a state of meditation. I could be smelling flowers, or I could be sitting out in the ocean waiting for a wave to come while I'm surfing, or it just could be doing something really mundane, but the mind falls into this state of meditation as opposed to having manipulated and controlled it. And this also then serves to liberate the ego, instead of the ego saying, look what I did, look at the concentration I achieved, look how long I sat still, look at the insight that I got. The ego kind of has to take a step back and go, I didn't plan that. I didn't know I was going to fall into, third jhana. I'm joking about third jhana, but who knows what states we fall into. And really, literally, and it's almost, how in life you daydream sometimes? And I've never really heard the technical explanation from a skillful Buddhist master on what is the state of daydreaming. But you know how, it could have been in the classroom at school, you could be just sitting on a bus, quite often you're just looking out the window or just staring at some kind of phenomenon that's unfolding, and you fall into that state of daydreaming, where something's happening, but you're kind of not really there. And there may not necessarily be any specific story that you're daydreaming about, you're just kind of in that state. So you fall into that. It's not like, okay, now I'm going to daydream. You can't set that experience up. So in the same way, the mind can, having had many experiences of falling into this state of, let's call it awareness, a state of pure awareness. I was calling it a state of meditation earlier, a state of pure awareness, and it can be anywhere, anytime. And I think this also is happening to me because my mind has dropped that idea that I have to meditate to get into this state. But now I realize this state could happen to me anywhere. And it's really beautiful. And then the ego has to also then accept, oh, I didn't do that. It's not random as such, but it's a state of, probably more a state of where the ego takes a step back and just allows things to be as they are. And then there's this maybe pure awareness, and then even an insight then arises from that pure awareness. And this is how our practice really flows very beautifully into our daily life, and very effortlessly as well.
So this is like beyond mindfulness.
Yes, it's the natural continuity or effect of mindfulness in our daily life, but it still does come from the meditation. Yeah. And definitely it comes from reminding yourself, remembering to be mindful in as many different situations in your life as possible. So it's still trying to break out of the mold of the, sitting down, cross-legged meditation, or the formal standing or walking meditation, and starting to train your mind to believe, I can meditate on the bus. I can meditate while I'm brushing my teeth. That is mindfulness of sitting on the bus, mindfulness of brushing the teeth, awareness of running or exercising or driving or what have you. Then we break out of that mold, and then having done that, then with those awarenesses in those many different areas of your life, then there's natural realizations and insights will just pop up when you least expect it. And that's when the ego has to admit, I didn't do that. And this is beautiful. And then you start to feel this, I think some even refer to it as grace, which is a Christian terminology, but grace is kind of, I don't know how it's actually termed, but it sounds like, it's almost like God shows himself, herself, itself to you in a very pure and natural way when you weren't expecting it.
Yeah, it's sort of like you get a bit of leadership or guidance or something, or pointing it away or something.
Yeah.
As a impression.
Yeah. And so this, in Buddhism we probably don't have grace, but if we did it would be something like this. And it's perhaps just a natural experience of the Dhamma, to just experience the pure nature of body, mind, whatever is really present. And it's a state of non-resistance, a state of acceptance, a state of surrendering and allowing things to be.
Yeah, I think
as they
Buddhism does have grace in that regard.
Yeah.
You just sort of feel you're on the path, and the path points you in that direction, doesn't it? I don't think Christians so much think themselves on the path as much as Buddhists do.
Perhaps not. They may perceive themselves more as being guided by God.
Yeah.
But then again,
That's on a path too.
Hey?
That's on a path. That's also on a path.
To some extent, for sure, yeah. Yeah. I had a nice analogy recently. I've had it for a couple, maybe a long time, but I kind of put it into words recently, and it was about being a passenger. And this can actually go into some length, but I'll try and give you the brief version of it and why I talk about it. I used to think that I was the driver, the captain of the ship, the pilot of the aeroplane, the driver of the train or the bus. That's what the ego does. That's its standpoint. I'm in control. And I came to understand that I'm actually a passenger. And
who's driving?
that's the question. I'm looking out the window and I'm observing everything that's happening. And then I realize, I'm not driving. So then, yes, the question does arise. Well, who's driving? The question, who is driving, is not the right question. Because it's not a who. In the case of our body, mind, etc., it's not so much a who, it's a what. And what is driving? We could call it karma, as in the natural unfolding of cause and effect. And in fact, I'll call it karma for the sake of this analogy. And it's the trusting that the driver is not so much taking you where you want to go, but you are going exactly where you are supposed to go. Without your personal desires and wishes, etc. And I'm not saying this because I am saying this just because when I sit and meditate, what I feel is this natural unfolding of phenomenon. And I am not the driver. I am only a passenger. When I sit to meditate, it's no different to sitting on a bus and looking both out the window and seeing the world passing by, and looking in the bus and seeing the other passengers and the seats, and even when we go through a tunnel or something and I look at the window and I see my own reflection, I see myself. This is all an analogy for what we experience in meditation. We see the body, we see the environment around us, we see other people, but we also see our mind. So we see the external, we see the internal, but we don't see a driver. You can't see karma. You can experience it as it's unfolding. You can know it as a concept because somebody told it to you and explained it to you. But then you can understand that, yes, well, it must be right because I'm seeing that this leads to that, that leads to this leads to that. Everything is causing the next thing to happen, and so it's an unfolding. And there is no way for me to know where's my destination. I only can know that I am on the journey. I am currently moving, flowing, experiencing. And that is a fact. You can feel it. You feel every experience. You feel the wind, the sun, the sounds, your breath, your pulse. You experience thoughts and mental images and emotions that pass and flow through your mind. There is this perfect flow of mental and physical energy in every moment. But you can't know where this is taking you. And so you're a passenger on a journey, but without a destination. And you can't know the driver. And I think this is part of our problem, part of our dilemma, is that we're trying to know the driver. We're trying to control, manipulate, we're trying to drive, we're trying to take control of the vehicle, and then we're also trying to know, who is this driver and where is the driver taking me? Where will I get to? But this practice is really just telling us to completely relinquish. And you can't understand this. If you are listening to this for the first time in your life, you've just walked in and thought, I'll listen to a talk, or your friend or your mother said, go and listen to this talk, and you hear some dude going, relinquish everything, sort of accept everything, see everything as it is.
Scratch your head 3 times and walk out the door again.
Yeah, or you'll be shocked, you'll be disappointed, you'll be angry, you'll resist the information. And I can only say this now because I feel like I've been this passenger all my existence, but I did resist it. I did try to control. I did try to make everything the way I wanted it to be. And through my practice, I've come to realize that it's not about my personal will, but it's not also about the personal will of some other controlling being that then has control over me, but this natural flow of an unfolding of cause and effect relationship that is pure, and it's simple, and it's natural, and it's real because you can experience it, at least to the extent that of reality according to your own perception. And it's a flow, it's energy, and it just keeps moving. Consciousness keeps moving. Experience keeps moving. Awareness keeps moving. Mind keeps moving. Physical phenomenon all around us is moving. The body is moving. Sounds moving, changing, flowing. And this is where I come up with this analogy of being a passenger. And actually I'm very happy to just be a passenger.
I don't often hear that sentiment in Buddhism. It's like a surrendering.
It is. It's exactly what it is.
It's more like an Islamic sort of
yes.
concept.
In Islam, it's predetermined. That's why they surrender.
Yeah.
This is not.
Submit to.
That's right. Submit to the will of Allah. But in this, we're coming back to the reality of the experience of the present moment that is unfolding without a vision or a view of where we are actually going. And so there isn't a belief in fate or destiny or determinism as such. This is a realistic observation of the nature of things. So in some sense it's not surrender because we never had control. It's the realization that things are unfolding exactly according to the universal law of cause and effect. And this really is an impersonal law. And this is where also the Buddha's teachings is talking about anatta, no self. And so when I say I am a passenger, it's not even, there is no I even that is the passenger. It's more the vehicle is going. Terminology is lost. But that's why I also like to refer to energy and flow, the natural unfolding of cause and effect.
So what role then does intention, action and choice play in all of this?
So we come back to the ego that I believe that I am. And we have to operate from the personality that I believe I am. And you're sitting here and I'm sitting here and, we've been taught this information, and so all the concepts fall back into place, and I need to follow some instructions that will help me to get to the point where I can have this realization that I am not what I think I am. But conceptually and conventionally, yes, I need intention, I need direction, I need information, I need application, I need to put in some effort, but obviously a wise and balanced effort, not too much nor too little. And does that answer your question?
Yes, it seems like it's operating on a different plane. Like the analogy you were using before about how it's almost like we're swimming in water and then you stick your head out for a bit and you have a breather, but then you have to keep swimming and you stick your head back into the water.
Yes. You come up. Yeah, that was my other analogy of, suddenly you come up, your head pops out and you go, oh, there's a world out here, above the water. I didn't realise it. I was just under there holding my breath, struggling, swimming, etc. I pop out, but then as soon as I take a breath, all of a sudden I'm sort of swallowed back up by the water, and there I am back swimming and struggling again. And that popping out of the water is kind of like almost, we were talking about a momentary nibbanic experience where there's this sudden liberation where you don't have to be what you thought you were anymore. And there's a sense of freedom, relinquishment, or a sense of non-suffering there for a moment, but then all of a sudden you're back in it again. And that's where I guess we have to come back to these terms of intention and right effort and doing things.
The concepts we use to put some sort of order to our neurotic ego.
Sure.
And what it's trying to do.
Yeah, and we need some sense of, say, self-discipline, some training of the mind, etc. We still have to use all of these terminologies, unfortunately. But there is a time where, having used the trainings, the techniques, the forms, the discipline, etc., we fall into these experiences that cannot be predetermined or even expected. And when we fall into them, they do serve to give us some faith. They serve to let us know that we're on the right track, and they also serve to perhaps give us a glimpse into the non-self nature of things. But then, of course, all those concepts fall back into place. We may struggle, practice, etc. for some time, again fall into a state of freedom or non-self, even if you want to call it enlightenment, as in a momentary experience of enlightenment. But the more often that these happen, then the more we're inspired to practice, and then the more we do it, and the more we realize it, and then these gather in our life. And these little flashes of wisdom start to become more of an accumulated wisdom that then starts to drive our life, as opposed to being guided by ignorance and delusion in our life. We start to be guided by wisdom, confidence, faith, trust. And these, as you know, then create the right effort and the right mindfulness, the right concentration, and then the right wisdom again creates the right trust and confidence, etc. And thus the beautiful wheel of Dhamma continues.
Yes, because I sometimes get that impression that I've sort of kick-started a self-replicating positive sort of wheel. So slowly goes around and gets a little bit better.
It does, and that's why it's also called the wheel of Dhamma, because those, especially the Noble Eightfold Path, is often referred to as the wheel of Dhamma, and it keeps rolling and it keeps repeating, and those 8 elements keep supporting each other, and then I almost wanted to say amplify or exaggerate or accumulate. I don't know if any of these words are actually right, but
it gives a positive feedback.
It certainly is, yes. And as you get that good experience from the Noble Eightfold Path, it then feeds and inspires and helps us to have more of that experience. So definitely it's a wheel that is turning, and it only has one direction. And that's what I love about it also. It is the direction to enlightenment, to freedom, to the cessation of suffering. And, you know, it's not doing figure eights and you know, going backwards or sideways, as much as we may think that it may be doing that sometimes, or, you know, stopping and being broken down by the side of the road or something. Actually, the Noble Eightfold Path is a wheel that keeps turning and only goes in one direction. And as much as I said there is no destination, I believe that perhaps, and according to some other influences and teachings that I'm experiencing, that perhaps this Nibbana is something that is also concurrently experiential within our current experience, except we're not seeing it because we are lost in our delusion and our ignorance, etc. And that's why every now and again we fall into this grace, fall into this pure mindfulness, fall into the awareness of consciousness, or as I said, that, you know, you have this momentary enlightenment where you pop up out of, it's almost like your head comes out of the clouds, and you look around and go, oh, there's a whole wide world here. And then it doesn't last very long, unfortunately. But it happens more often, more frequently. It can start to last more often and become longer. And the fact that it does keep arising is very inspiring. And sometimes what I say, and this has been a realization for a very long time, I would have to say, that it's not so much that I am mindful all the time, because people would expect that from a mindfulness meditation teacher. Oh, you must be mindful all the time. And then I realized, but my teachers don't look mindful all the time.
And you sometimes can't find your keys.
Yes, of course. But what I realized is that mindfulness is always on standby. It's always available. And I can slip into, fall into, or whatever you want to call it, create mindfulness at any moment. And I also believe peace is always available. Love is always available, both, you know, whatever kind of love you want to call it, romantic love or metta, unconditional love. But also all of the other beautiful things, forgiveness, compassion, acceptance. These are all potentialities that are just available in every moment. Just as fear and anger and sadness and disappointment are also potentialities. But once you see that these are driven by ignorance, and wisdom increases, realizes the unnecessity, or is that a word? Unnecessity of those things, or the useless nature of those things, it starts to operate more on these positive things, gratitude and forgiveness and acceptance, etc. And this is our path. This is also the use of mindfulness puts us in a state of either concentration or mindfulness, pure mindfulness. We get insight that inspires us, gives us more energy, gives us more mindfulness, and so these 5 mental faculties, the pancha indriya, are also operating like a wheel and inspiring each other. The more wisdom that arises, the less ignorance arises. So wisdom displaces the ignorance as light displaces darkness. What a beautiful path we're on.
Beautiful. Thank you.
You're very welcome.